Welcome to the Leadership Expose podcast. This podcast is for leaders at diverse levels and organizations around the world who are seeking to scale and transform their leadership, to level up their business and to create an impact in the lives of people all around them. Business topics, trends, innovation, and the intersection with leadership is the focus. We enable success. I'm your host, Stephen Paul. In this episode today, we have the honor of experiencing a leader who has a combined experience of working for the nonprofit sector and being self-employed within the domains of mental health, but also brings the wisdom and experience of an entrepreneur who owned an online fashion mall. We're joined by Candace Alley, President and Chief Executive Officer of Trauma Resource Network, holds governance roles and has a coaching practice. We'll learn about her, but also about the topic of trauma and how she's making a difference. Welcome, Candace. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you for having me, Stephen. I'm doing well.
Wonderful. Candace, tell us briefly about yourself. Where are you based?
We're in North Carolina. Namely, I live in Hillsborough, and Trauma Resource Network's headquarters is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Awesome. What's the weather like today in North Carolina?
It is beautiful. The sun's shining, it's warm, and it's just a beautiful day.
Oh, what lovely. I'm based in London, as you know, and we're in the UK, and we're having kind of a heat wave. It's about average about 23 degrees. That's what we call a heat wave here, by the way.
Yeah.
Candace, tell us briefly about your personal and your professional journey.
So in 2016, I started a fashion boutique, and then from there it grew. That was my beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, and it grew into an online mall where many retailers would sell their clothing. And then the pandemic hit in 2020 around the world, as we all know, or most know. And I come to the realization that there was something more that I needed to do to try to help people. It just didn't seem like enough that I was helping people sell their clothing. I wanted to help people and had gotten to a point in my life where I felt more comfortable in sharing my story and the things that I'd been through. And I decided to become more educated around the realm of trauma, and really got into my own healing journey very deep. And then in January of 2022, complex trauma became something that the World Health Organization finally recognized. And then I knew it was like an aha moment that Trauma Resource Network would be an organization that I would found that would really provide resources to people who have had a traumatic experience in their life that may not know where to find resources or how to find help or where to go for that help. And so what we really try to do at Trauma Resource Network is just help people by providing them those resources.
And are you leading this whole effort by yourself, or do you have a team of people? Do you have an organization that is set up to help you succeed?
We do. So it's myself. We have a chief operations officer. We have a board of directors. So there is a team of us, and that team came together pretty quickly. Based on the goal, the vision, and the mission of the organization. And we're all out there working every day to fulfill the mission of the organization.
So Candace, this is very interesting. I'm keen to delve a little bit more deeper into this, but is this your primary focus now?
Absolutely.
With your company? Okay, so
Yes.
You've moved away from the online fashion mall. You're focusing on the people element. Trauma care, and you mentioned in one of our earlier conversations about the coaching modality and how you're providing unconditional regard for individuals struggling with traumatic or overcoming traumatic experiences. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, you touched on that one briefly, but tell us a little bit more about. the start and how that journey goes from an individual's perspective,
Sure.
experiencing with
Um,
you. Yeah.
yeah, so I had gone through therapy many times in my life. I've been in therapy in and out, in and out. And then in 2018, I really began to take my recovery very seriously. And what happened then was I got on my recovery journey and started networking with other folks in recovery. And then, like I said, really began to learn more about trauma and various types of trauma and all that when the pandemic began in 2020, and got into a recovery coaching program and found it very interesting that I felt like I couldn't start my coaching practice. I had all this education, I had all this stuff, but I felt like I just couldn't get it started. Like I was feeling what many refer to as imposter syndrome. And what makes me good enough to do this? You know, why do I think I can do this? Why do I think I can help other people after being so confident about that that's what I wanted to do? And then feeling so helpless, like, can I really do this? And I started working with a coach, and coaching was so powerful for me because they didn't go back and try to process and do talk therapy of the things from my past. They wanted to know where I was today and where did I want to go in my future. And for me, that was just so powerful because I've relived my past long enough in my life. And what I wanted help with was, how do I move forward? And that motivational interviewing and coaching modality really, really did that for me. And so much so that I knew I had to become a coach, and, you know, that I was ready to actually do it instead of just taking the education piece. So it was very powerful once I actually experienced the coaching. And now
Yeah.
I'm a believer.
Yeah, good, wonderful. I'm intrigued now. So does your company apply this, or is it just yourself, or do you have like a team of people who applies this model through the through your business services?
Yeah. So we actually partner with other organizations, and we offer online peer support and coaching services primarily. And the idea behind doing it online was that people in rural communities, people who couldn't afford to travel to go to a coaching session, people who, you know, we're trying to reduce those barriers as much as we absolutely can for people. And, you know, with having online telehealth, really the barriers that you need to overcome are having an internet connection and a device.
Yeah.
And research has shown that most people have a phone, a smartphone, and most people that have a smartphone connect to the internet. And if they don't have that, there are libraries and ways to overcome those barriers at low or no cost.
Yeah. And Candace, are there other organizations like this similar to what you're doing in the local area, let's say North Carolina, or just generally compared to what you're doing now?
So I don't know if there are any organizations that really focus on psychological trauma like we do at Trauma Resource Network. I have networked with some other coaches. A complex trauma coach that I know in Australia is doing a lot of work. But as far as here in the States, trauma is still something that's very, very stigmatized. A lot of people see it as someone would need to be in a war zone to experience trauma, or would need to have gone through something physically traumatic to be a trauma survivor. And what we know based on the research and the science is that's not the case at all. And Dr. Gabor Mate tells us, you know, we have to start seeing ourselves as not what's wrong with me, but rather what happened to me. And it's a huge mindset shift that we have to make. And as we can make that as a society, and what begins individually, and then it can become as a society that we shift our mindset and thinking. And that's part of what Trauma Resource Network hopes to do, is to have a global reach and to be able to spread that word and that awareness to more people, that they're not, people are not broken. The events that have happened to them have caused their brain to rewire in such a way that they live in a hypervigilant state.
Yeah, yeah, no, wonderful. So Candace, you've got a company, you've got a board, you are serving on committees in the county. What are some of the challenges related to how you're operating, but you as your profession within these different dimensions of these different organizations? What kind of challenges are you facing?
There's a lot of challenges with funding. Um, their grants are very competitive, and so that's one challenge that we find, and simply just people not understanding trauma and really working to educate around that, and just sitting down and talking to people about what trauma is and how it affects pretty much everybody in some way.
Okay, wonderful. And let's move on to your experience as a leader as well. So, can you share a story that comes to mind from a time as as an entrepreneur, a senior leader, or even in your current role, that resulted in a highly positive outcome, aside from the big achievement of establishing your company?
Yeah, sure. So we, in our organization, we recently did some networking and things. And what I really have done is worked very, very hard in our team to foster a trauma-informed workplace. And we all work remotely, so that can have its challenges. But I do believe that through being authentic as a leader and leading with my mind, but also with my heart, it really has allowed for me to allow space for others to have other things going on in their life, and really trying to be understanding that we can't always be in the same place at the same time. And what it's really done for Trauma Resource Network is given us a really, really high performing team that doesn't have to connect a whole lot to really get things done. Because if you communicate clearly and you show that compassion to one another and you have that trust built, then that really, really makes a difference. And I'm a firm believer of that. And I lead my organization in that way. And it's really paying off for us.
Yeah, it's powerful words: communication, authenticity, and trust. That definitely helps in building your organization, but also brings in your team together on a common purpose, on a vision that you have established. So well done you on that one. And you mentioned about pandemic and how you're actually navigating through that. Are you fully integrated despite pandemic, and how to go about working despite the challenges of pandemic?
So I worked remotely before the pandemic, since our business was already online, and then transitioned. And you'd asked me earlier if I'd gone completely away from our boutique business, and that actually is still a thriving business that my husband now operates. So we were very accustomed, my husband and I were very accustomed to working side by side on very different projects prior to the pandemic. So for us, it wasn't a huge change. It wasn't like we went from the office to working at home like so many other people had to deal with. And so for us, we were already integrated into not working in a big office surrounded by a lot of people and sharing the same space in our personal lives and our work lives, which, has its pluses and minuses. But I think if there's something to be said, if you can live with someone long-term for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for sure. So based on that, I would say that we are decently integrated with the pandemic. I don't know that anyone is fully integrated, because it seems like at every turn there's something new to navigate. But I would say that business-wise, we are integrated and we are doing well.
Wonderful. Any life lessons you'd like to share, or people that you follow or admire that has inspired you to move into this direction?
Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, he is an amazing person in the trauma realm and very resilient, as evidenced by, leaving one organization, founding another, and it becoming, equally, if not more successful. And that was very powerful for me. So I've researched a lot of different trauma focused practitioners and authors and speakers and all of that. And Dr. Bessel van der Kolk just really, really speaks to me in a way that a lot of others just haven't. And but don't get me wrong, Dr. Stephen Porges, Dr. Gabor Mate, Janina Fisher, all of those folks are just great, amazing people who are trailblazing the way for psychological trauma. And Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book that I really, really resonated with, and that was The Body Keeps the Score. And I think for me, that's what really did a lot of created maybe that interest in his work for me, is where that started. And then just continuing to research him, he's definitely someone who I aspire to be more like, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And Candace, what are some of the important topics or trends on your mind these days? Aside from the trauma aspect or the subtopics of it, that you feel impact people like you and me, but also businesses, leaders, boards, and journeys that they need to be focusing on as they progress through these complex times.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, as humans, we can sometimes be quick to pass judgment on others. And so just really trying to give each other space to be human and to make mistakes, and to realize that none of us are perfect and none of us are going to get it all right every single time. And really respecting and honoring the fact that there's usually more than one way to get to the end. Some people walk, some people run, some people sprint to get to the end of the track. But no matter which way you take, as long as it works for you, just give other people space to take that race however they choose.
Yeah. And Candace, you wrote to me that you refer to yourself as a human doing rather than a human being, because you always try to do something to pay forward in some way, pay forward to others. Tell me a little bit more about that philosophy. I mean, how did you come to that? I like the way you described it, human doing versus human being.
Well, my family always tells me, do I ever stop? Do I ever just stop and be? And the answer is yes, I do. And I do that when I meditate, have my personal meditations in the morning and at night when I get around to them at night. But I always feel like I need to be doing something. And it really gives me personal fulfillment. It's part of my self-care journey to be doing for others. That is something that fulfills me. I've never been a person that a lot of money or material things really drove me or made me happy. I obviously, aspire to do well and do my best at whatever I do. But money has just never been a driving factor for me. Rather, the impact that I can make in people's lives are something that I find very powerful for my inner peace and for my personal fulfillment as a human being. And so for me, doing for others really warms my heart. It makes me happy. I'd much rather give a gift than receive a gift. Not that I don't want someone else to feel good by giving me something, but I would rather give them something, or tell them to buy themselves something before buying me something. So I just try to put others before myself, and in ways we're all selfish, and that's not always a bad thing. And so that's something very important to note as well. And that's actually something that coaches and mentors have really pointed out to me. like sometimes you have to be selfish, because if you don't take care of your family first and your needs first, then you won't have the energy to help others. Much like we often hear, we have to put on our face mask first if we're on an airplane and get ourselves the oxygen we need before we can help others. Otherwise, we're going to be of no good to ourselves or anyone else. So there are times we have to be selfish, and you know that it is what it is. And selfish has got such a bad connotation in this world these days, but it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes we have to be selfish. It's when we become over selfish and all we worry about is ourselves and nothing about others, that it becomes, you know, we start maybe skirting the line there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's something that I have consciously discovered within myself, and I'm applying that, because that connotation was always there within myself, selfish. But no, actually, you do need to take care of yourself. It's very, very important. The oxygen mask. These are good analogies, you know, to refer to in your mind to actually progress. So,
Yes.
Candace, tell me, outside of your professional day to day, what interests you like to do, or what do you like most?
I love spending time with my family. I run a peer support group that I always get as much, if not more, out of the group than others do. And that's just part of my own personal recovery. That's totally outside of my work. And I'm a girl. I love to shop.
And you did build an online shopping mall too.
I did.
Okay, wonderful. So, to tell us a little bit more about a day in the life of Candace. What does it look like,
Yeah.
morning to evening?
So I get up in the mornings, and right now my life includes having my father with us who's battling cancer. And so I make sure that he's taken care of. I make sure that my 6 dogs, I have 6 min pins, I make sure they're all settled before I begin my day. My husband assists with that, and we both work on that. And I meditate in the morning before I take care of my personal hygiene and all of that, and then get started with my work day, whether it be come to my office or work from my home office. And then I work till usually 4 or 5 in the evening, and then I typically right now then do some work, some more work on my own, you know, my own personal business outside of the nonprofit. And at this moment, I actually hold a position with another organization in the technology department. So I sprinkle that into my day and get the hours in for that as well. And then just try to be present and spend time with my family in the evenings, and my friends and family, and balance that as best I can, and make sure that my dad is okay and taken care of, and all of those things. So my life's by no means perfect. It's not easy being an entrepreneur by any means. And I don't try to sugarcoat it like it is. So, you know, real life happens. And so there's sometimes that I just can't get to a meeting if there's a family emergency. But I really try to be, in all that I do, I just try to be as authentic and true to myself and true to the mission of the organization that I'm serving.
Amazing. What's the next big business or personal adventure for you?
Well, I keep telling our team that we're going to take recovery across America. So we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned. I'm very serious about that. So we'll see how it goes.
I believe in you, Candace.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're coming to a close very shortly. Is there any messages that you'd like to share, closing messages, or a challenge to other leaders who are doing similar type of work, but also on the other side, on life, leadership, key lessons, any topics that you'd like to share or challenge other leaders?
Yeah, leadership's not easy. And I challenge all leaders to just continue to be resilient and know that this is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And so just trying to get to the top is not easy. And by trying to get to the top, I mean by starting our own organizations and being able to believe in what we want to do enough to actually start that organization, and know that, if you're a new entrepreneur, it's hard. The first few years are very, very difficult. But there are rewards in it. And so I just encourage other leaders to just keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on fulfilling your mission and vision of your organization, and you will see progress over time. So my final thought would just be what I tell my children, is that even one small task a day over the course of a year adds up to 365 things you've done to make a difference. So even the small things add up. And so I just encourage other leaders just to do small things, because people notice it and they do add up. And as long as we're doing the right thing when nobody's looking, just like when people are looking, then that, in my mind, is what makes us good leaders.
Candace, thank you very much for being with us today and for sharing your journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here, Stephen.
Thank you. Okay, folks, thank you very much for listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode with another guest, another leader who will be sharing his journey on how venture capital supports growing firms. Stay tuned. Thank you and have a wonderful day.